Hey guys, welcome to Kiss and Tell Tuesdays. It's your girl Steffi Kiss, and this week I have the amazing Carla Wilmaris. If you listen to episode 30 of the Do I Look Fat podcast, she dropped all the gems about her pregnancy, about reacting to people and what they say and all that jazz. So make sure you check that out to get all the gems. But today we're going to talk about shit that kind of gets on our nerves a little bit. I wanted to talk about Mercury retrograde.
Oh, fuck that Mercury and its retrograde. That's the devil.
Listen, okay? For anybody who doesn't know, Mercury was in retrograde from October 13th to November 4th. So we're recording this actually amidst the Mercury retrograde. We still have a couple of days. And if you don't know, Mercury is the planet that rules communication. It rules communication, travel, and technology. So whenever it is in retrograde, that means that all of that has an opportunity to turn to shit. Okay?
All of it has.
I mean, we had some technical issues before this recording itself.
I had to shut down the whole computer. It was like pop-ups that I've never seen in my life before. And I use Zoom on a daily basis. Like, what is going on? Oh, Mercury. And it's fucking retrograde.
Always. So I actually listened to your last episode on Shit on 30, where you had a little testimony about how it was to get started for Whatever She Says, your new podcast with Wax King. And you talked about how you were just going through it. Can you tell us a little bit more about everything that happened then?
Yes, I can. I didn't know if I was going to put it out. And it took me 2 days to say, am I going to talk about it? Because I'm like, I don't know if I want to. But what happened essentially was, for about a week and a half, him and I's communication was just off for whatever reason. I didn't know what it was. And finally one day I'm like, oh my God, I'm trying to find a reason for it, right? So when you're trying to put a reason to stuff, it's like, oh, it's Mercury retrograde. I don't truly believe in like the stars and the moons and all that stuff, right. But I do believe in energy. So I'm like, oh, this is it. Boom. Our communication's fucked up because of it. Little do I realize, and this is why I called it a testimony, him and I come from both very religious, spiritual backgrounds. He grew up Pentecostal. I grew up evangelist. And now I am non-denominational Christian. So it's in the same umbrella. We believe in the same God. We have the same religion. Just one is a little stricter than the other one. And he is very old school. So we're starting this new podcast, and we're both very transparent. We're both very open. We're both very opinionated. And we have this great idea for a show. We have amazing audiences, and we're about to put it out, but we decided to add a segment called Pass the Word with Wax, and he's very into his Bible. So we're going to end it all with a Bible verse and him breaking it down, his understanding, or the word's not translation, his interpretation of what that verse means. While we're doing this, it's a 5-minute segment, if that. While we're doing this, we can't get through it. And now we're fighting, and we have our producer on the other side, and she's just like, well, guys, let's just calm down.
Shout out to May.
It's okay. Shout out to May. May turned into a full-blown therapist that night. So the first one we first did, it was an argument. We kept it going. The second one, we had an argument about prayer on the first one. I was saying that, I'm like, look, if you have to start with a little bit of prayer, start there. And he's like, no, you pray for hours. And I'm like, who prays for hours? And he's like, you have to. But he is a prayer warrior. He can do that. I can't. But it was hard for him to get out of that mindset. And we're not communicating. We're fighting over prayer. Who prays the best? And who is God going to listen to? Literally, we're like, no, God's going to listen to me more than he's listening to you. Like, what are we talking about?
Right.
So then we get to recording again. And now we're arguing because I want to just read the verse in the NIV version, and he wants to read it in KJV, which is King James. And I'm like, okay, why can't we read both? He's like, no, we're not reading them both.
Mine is better.
I'm like, what? Right. No, literally. That's what I was saying. And I'm like, what? So we're going back and forth, and now we're arguing and screaming. May's like, I feel like I shouldn't be here, right. Even virtually. And I get up and leave, and while I left, and I just remember being so upset and crying, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And I realized that, yes, Mercury retrograde is going on, but though through my beliefs, so I don't know what everybody else does believe in, how they are spiritually, and there is a higher power. I realized that this was more of a block in the devil trying to use us to destroy something before it's even out. Why would he want us to have an audience like the one that we have, that loves to have fun, that loves the world, that's just having a good time, and end it with food for thought, end it with the word, end it with something positive? Why would the devil want that? He'd rather us talk about sucking dick and hoes all day, and if we add that into it, it's like, wait, so they're gonna grow from this? So I had to then realize that's what the fuck was going on. And for me to calm the fuck down and apologize, even if I had to, it's like, just do it. We're both being hella stubborn at the moment. He feels very, very, very strongly about his religion. And so do I, just not as strong. Like, I'm not that it's not as strong. It's just, I'm very fluid with it and a lot more open than a Pentecostal is. Someone that grew up Pentecostal, whose father was a pastor. My grandfather was a pastor, but he died when I was 12. And he actually cursed on, anyways, we'll move on from that. So I grew up very, very, very different.
Right.
So I had to make sure that communication, a Mercury retrograde, or the devil did not use me to tear down something before it even started. And I went to McDonald's, I picked up some McFlurries, and I brought them to the house, and I gave it to him, and I was just like, you know what, I'm sorry if I interrupted you to read the NIV version, and it became this huge thing where like I was like, well, I'll just go have the baby in Australia. I'll see you next year. Like, we're breaking up over this. Not really. But, you know, it was just such a big blow up, all because the devil was trying to stop something from coming out. Communication just wasn't there. When all it took was, and I'm sorry, to talk about it, call my cousin, have someone else's perspective, and just leave it alone. And then we did another one. I read it, and it didn't even bother him.
Right.
The next time we did it, I read it, and it was like, it did not bother him. And I was like, wow. If I would have let my stubbornness and I would have let the devil work through me, this show would have never been out.
But it's also because you had that conversation, right? So you discussed, you know, you were just like, listen, we're having this conversation. We're talking about it. I'm not going to let, you know, your opinion or your interpretation of what we're reading, like, really get to me. For me, I feel like I'm kind of like you in a way. I wouldn't say I'm Christian. I believe in God. I'm just not a churchgoer. That's not me. But I believe in a higher power, whether it's, you know, God, Allah, Gaia, you know, all of that. I believe in it, right? And when it comes to astrology, I see it more so as like, because, okay, God created the planets, right? So if the planets govern certain things, that's how God intended it to be. That's how I see it, right? Okay. So if it's telling you, you know, Mercury is in retrograde, this is something you can literally see in the sky, like it's happening, right? And if Mercury really affects communication, then it's putting me on high alert of it. So the past couple of weeks, I've had miscommunications on top of miscommunications on top of miscommunications, just everywhere. But because like I realized that it was Mercury retrograde, you realized, you were like, you know what? It's almost the same thing. You're just seeing it different. You're like, the devil is here and he's trying to get to me, right? Right.
And all of this is faith-based. We can't see everything. So spirituality and religion, and regardless of what you believe in, there's something called faith. And that's basically believing without seeing. For sure. So if you choose to believe in astrology, if you choose to believe in the energy of the planets, if you choose to believe in Santeria, you know, whatever it is that you choose to believe in, you're believing in it blindly. It's a feeling that you have. So if you want to believe that it's Mercury retrograde fucking up communication, that is what you're going to believe. If you want to believe that it's the devil, that's how you're going to feel.
Right. And it all matters on what you're going to do for it. Right?
Correct.
So how are you going to maneuver during this time when the devil's testing you, when the planets are going wild and all of this shit? Like, what can you do? So when I was having all of these miscommunications with these people, I'm quick. Like, if I'm having an argument with somebody and you do something I don't like, I'm like, fuck you, fuck your family. I don't want nothing to do with you. Don't ever fucking talk to me again. Like, all of that. And I literally, 100%, like, and I will literally never talk to you again. But at this point, I was like, you know what? there's more to this than just what I'm feeling right now. I really need to sit back. I need to chill, and I need to reflect as to why all of this is happening. Maybe I did something to cause the first miscommunication. Like, you know, it could just be, I'm mad that you did this, but what did I do in order to make you feel that way? So it's really, I've really just been trying to really reflect on my actions as well. Now, if I reflect on all of that, accountability is key. It's key. And I did a lot of apologizing this Mercury retrograde. Whether I knew I was doing wrong or not, I definitely took it upon myself to apologize to people, or just try to see it from their point of view as well. Like, why were you upset with me? Because I know why I'm upset with you, but I need to understand why you were upset with me. And if there's a reason for it, then I'm going to hold myself accountable, and I'm going to come to you and I'm going to be like, listen, I'm sorry for this and I'm sorry for that. If you can't reciprocate that to me, then now I know where we stand.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
No, for sure. Communication, and I don't think it has to be Mercury retrograde for there to be miscommunications. We're human. Mm-hmm. And every human has emotions. We all react to certain things, and it takes time for you to look within you and take that big word, accountability, and say, did I cause, like you said, did I cause some of this? Was the miscommunication? Did you interpret what I said wrong? There are times where I have arguments with Wax, and I'm like, but that's not what I meant.
Right.
He's like, so you said this, and I'm like, no, that's not what my intention was behind it at all. That's just how you perceived it. And there's times that he'll say certain things and I'll go off, and he's like, that's not even what I meant. And I'm like, well, that's how I took it, you know? So we have to realize we all speak differently and receive things differently. We can be saying the exact same thing and receive it a different way.
For sure. For sure. So before we end this little conversation, is there one piece of advice that you would like to leave my listeners with?
Mind your business, drink your water, be happy, and if it's not serving you, leave it behind.
Leave it behind. I hear that.
Yeah.
I hear that. I would just really tell my listeners, just to go on with what we were talking about, really just try to understand both sides of an argument as best as you can, because you never know. Miscommunication is a real thing. Perception is a real thing. So you just want to do that. And if it's meant to be that to save these relationships, then it will happen.
Right. It will. You can leave people behind.
That's
you can
perfectly okay too.
Businesses behind. You just can't leave your kids behind till they're 18. But aside from that, anybody else can stay behind if they're not serving a purpose in your life anymore. There are plenty of times I think we get stuck to people, into situations, and don't realize that everyone has a season in your life. And it could be forever, or it could be just a temporary season.
Which is fine.
You could just be seasonal. They have seasonal employees in the biggest companies all the time. So you might have just been seasonal in my life, and now you have to go, and it's okay.
Right. It doesn't have to be beef from here on out.
No,
like sometimes
not at all.
we can just not communicate anymore, or not be around each other anymore.
Or maybe just not as much.
Very true.
And that's fine too.
100%. Okay. Miss Carla, thank you so much for coming and
You're very welcome.
Kissing and telling with me.
They used to say that stuff was bad to do, but I like to kiss and tell anyway. I tell all my business. I kiss and tell everybody.
That's what we're here for. That's what we're here for. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Kiss and Tell. Remember to check Carla Wilmaris on last week's episode of the Do I Look Fat podcast, where she drops all types of gems. Thank you guys. Bye. Mwah.